Bargaining or haggling is a type of negotiation in which the buyer and seller of a good or service debate the price and exact nature of a transaction. If the bargaining produces agreement on terms, the transaction takes place. Bargaining is an alternative pricing strategy to fixed prices. Optimally, if it costs the retailer nothing to be engaged and allow bargaining, she can divine the buyer's willingness to spend. It allows for capturing more consumer surplus as it allows price discrimination, a process whereby a seller can charge a higher price to one buyer who is more eager. Haggling has largely disappeared in parts of the world where the cost to haggle exceeds the gain to retailers for most common retail items. However, for expensive goods sold to uninformed buyers such as automobiles, bargaining can remain commonplace. Dickering refers to the same process, albeit with a slight negative connotation. Bargaining is also the name chosen for the third stage of the Kubler-Ross model, even though it has nothing to do with price negotiations. Where bargaining takes place, not all transactions are open to bargaining. Both religious beliefs and regional custom may determine whether or not the seller is willing to bargain. Regional differences in North America and Europe. Bargaining is restricted to expensive or one-of-a-kind items and informal sales settings such as flea markets and garage sales. In other regions of the world, bargaining may be the norm, even for small commercial transactions. In Indonesia and elsewhere in Asia, locals haggle for goods and services everywhere from street markets to hotels. Even children learn to haggle from a young age. Participating in that tradition can make foreigners feel accepted. On the other hand, in Thailand, haggling seems to be softer than the other countries due to Thai culture, in which people tend to be humble and avoiding argument. However, haggling for food items is strongly discouraged in Southeast Asia and is considered an insult, because food is seen as a common necessity that is not to be treated as a tradable good. In almost all large complex business negotiations, a certain amount of bargaining takes place. One simplified, Western, way to decide when it's time to bargain is to break negotiation into two stages: creating value and claiming value. Claiming value is another phrase for bargaining. Many cultures take offense when they perceive the other side as having started bargaining too soon. This offense is usually as a result of their wanting to first create value for longer before they bargain together. The Chinese culture, by contrast, places a much higher value on taking time to build a business relationship before starting to create value or bargain. Not understanding when to start bargaining has ruined many an otherwise positive business negotiation. In areas where bargaining at the retail level is common, the option to bargain often depends on the presence of the store's owner. A chain store managed by clerks is more likely to use fixed pricing than an independent store managed by an owner or one of owner's trusted employees. The store's ambience may also be used to signal whether or not bargaining is appropriate. For instance, a comfortable and air-conditioned store with posted prices usually does not allow bargaining, but a stall in a bazaar or marketplace may. Supermarkets and other chain stores almost never allow bargaining. However, the importance of ambience may depend on the cultural commitment to bargaining. In Israel, prices on day-to-day items may be negotiable even in a Western-style store manned by a clerk. In India, the practice of bargaining is taken up by all the members of the family, irrespective of whether they are rich or poor. But it is mainly done by the former, since they don't want to pay more for items that do not catch their eyes, even if they are worth the price. But even this should be noted that the discriminations relating to caste exist as well, and hence the bargaining with shopkeepers of flea markets, who basically belong to the much discriminated Indian lower castes, i.e., Shudra and Ati Shudra. People tend to give them less money only because of the fact that Indians discriminate with their lower castes and poor, in ways unimaginable. In addition, it is done in all places, all the way from a garage sale, to a well-furnished shop with air conditioners, weighted by clerks. Theories. Behavioral theory. The personality theory in bargaining emphasizes that the type of personalities determine the bargaining process and its outcome. A popular behavioral theory deals with a distinction between hardliners and softliners. Various research papers refer to hardliners as warriors, while softliners as shopkeepers. It varies from region to region. Bargaining may take place more in rural and semi-urban areas than in a metro city. Game theory. Bargaining games refer to situations where two or more players must reach agreement regarding how to distribute an object or monetary amount. Each player prefers to reach an agreement in these games, rather than abstain from doing so. However, each prefers that the agreement favor their interests. Examples of such situations include the bargaining involved in a labor union and the directors of a company negotiating wage increases. The dispute between two communities about the distribution of a common territory, or the conditions under which two countries agree on nuclear disarmament. Analyzing these kinds of problems looks for a solution that specifies which component in dispute corresponds to each party involved. Players in a bargaining problem can bargain for the objective as a whole at a precise moment in time. The problem can also be divided so that parts of the whole objective become subject to bargaining during different stages. In a classical bargaining problem, the result is an agreement reached between all interested parties, or the status quo of the problem. It is clear that studying how individual parties make their decisions is insufficient for predicting what agreement will be reached. However, classical bargaining theory assumes that each participant in a bargaining process will choose between possible agreements, following the conduct predicted by the rational choice model. It is particularly assumed that each player's preferences regarding the possible agreements can be represented by a von Neumann-Morgenstern utility theorem function. Nash, 1950, defines a classical bargaining problem as being a set of joint allocations of utility, some of which correspond to what the players would obtain if they reach an agreement, and another that represents what they would get if they failed to do so. A bargaining game for two players is defined as a pair where F is the set of possible joint utility allocations, and D is the disagreement point. For the definition of a specific bargaining solution, it is usual to follow Nash's proposal, setting out the axioms this solution should satisfy. Some of the most frequent axioms used in the building of bargaining solutions are efficiency, symmetry, independence of irrelevant alternatives, scalar invariance, monotonicity, etc. The Nash bargaining solution is the bargaining solution that maximizes the product of an agent's utilities on the bargaining set. The Nash bargaining solution, however, only deals with the simplest structure of bargaining. It is not dynamic. Instead, for situations where the structure of the bargaining game is important, a more mainstream game theoretic approach is useful. This can allow players' preferences over time and risk to be incorporated into the solution of bargaining games. It can also show how the details can matter. For example, the Nash bargaining solution for prisoner's dilemma is different from the Nash equilibrium. Bargaining and posted prices. In retail markets, retailers can choose to sell at posted prices or allow bargaining. Selling at a public posted price commits the retailer not to exploit buyers once they enter the retail store, making the store more attractive to potential customers. While a bargaining strategy has the advantage that it allows the retailer to price discriminate between different types of customer. In some markets, such as those for automobiles and expensive electronic goods, firms post prices but are open to haggling with consumers. When the proportion of haggling consumers goes up, prices tend to rise. Processual theory. This theory isolates distinctive elements of the bargaining chronology in order to better understand the complexity of the negotiating process. Several key features of the processual theory include bargaining range, critical risk, security point. Integrative theory. Integrative bargaining is a negotiation strategy in which parties collaborate to find a win-win solution to their dispute. This strategy focuses on developing mutually beneficial agreements based on the interests of the disputants. Interests include the needs, desires, concerns, and fears important to each side. They are the underlying reasons why people become involved in a conflict. Integrative refers to the potential for the parties' interests to be combined in ways that create joint value or enlarge the pie. Potential for integration only exists when there are multiple issues involved in the negotiation. This is because the parties must be able to make trade-offs across issues in order for both sides to be satisfied with the outcome. Narrative theory. A very different approach to conceptualizing bargaining is as co-construction of a social narrative, where narrative, rather than economic logic, drives the outcome. Automated bargaining. When a bargaining situation is complex, finding Nash equilibrium is difficult using game theory. Evolutionary computation methods have been designed for automated bargaining, and demonstrated efficient and effective for approximating Nash equilibrium. Anchor pricing. Anchor price is the first call made during a bargain. The first call sets a condition of pricing bias towards the first caller.